welcome to this tactical analysis of the Paris Saint-Germain versus Real Madrid game. Before we get into this round of 16 tactical analysis, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing and sharing it on social media. With that, let's get into it. First things first is we're going to have a look at how Paris Saint-Germain set up. So typically in a 3-2-5 or a 3-1 in midfield, didn't really have to worry about building up from deep because Real Madrid didn't really have the opportunity to press them from Paris Saint-Germain's defensive third because Paris Saint-Germain monopolised possession throughout most of the game. Okay, so as mentioned, we have that 3-2-5 shape. So we've got our back three and then we've got our two midfielders. So this shape was created by Pereira, one of the centre midfielders, dropping into this right centre-back position. His position, as well as Kimpembe's, was crucial to Paris Saint-Germain being able to counter-press on loss of possession. I said it was a 3-2 or a 3-1 because Paredes, especially later in the game, stayed as a CDM, whereas Verratti would actually move into more like a number 10 position. He would move from this position and get higher, and he would try and float across the pitch, trying to have a creative influence on the game, similar to Messi. So Messi, who's playing as the centre forward, typically would drop, so doing his typical false nine thing and trying to drop between the lines, and often end up in this space and trying to switch or combine with Mbappe or later on Neymar, as well as also Di Maria, who again trying to stay narrow and create. Part of the reason for why these wide forwards could narrow is because of how high and wide the fullbacks for Paris Saint-Germain played. So consistently these two were in these very high, very wide positions. It allowed the forwards to narrow, but it also pinned back Real Madrid. Speaking of pinned back Real Madrid, we see that here with the wide midfield position of Asensio, as well as with Vinicius Jr. on the far side. Both of them have to try and help out with the fullbacks. And then centrally, Real Madrid really struggled to be able to put any sort of pressure just ahead of them in this space. They did try and move to a 4-1-4-1 where Casemiro would drop and become the CDM, and then you'd have your Modric and Kroos as the right CM and less centre midfielder, and they would try and put a bit of more pressure onto the likes of Verratti, Paredes and the rest of the forwards that were trying to play in that central space. But that pressure was often fruitless, just because of the fact that Paris Saint-Germain always had the option to just pass it out wide into one of these two fullbacks and just relieve all that pressure. This is another example of that 3-2-5 shape for Paris Saint-Germain, except here I wanted to just highlight the position of Mbappe running off the shoulder of the last man, always a threat by his positioning, by his pace. With that said, you've got your back three. I can't fully see them here, but you've got Pereira, the right centre back, you've got Kimpembe, your left centre back, and then a little bit deeper you've got Marquinhos. Your near-sided fullback in this occasion isn't pushing as high as one might expect. You can see the far-sided Hakimi pushing up and providing a potential outlet during this almost counter-attack, quite direct play by Paris Saint-Germain. I think it's also good here to highlight again Mbappe. For most of the game, he did stay to this left-hand side until Neymar was brought on, and then Neymar played more towards that left-hand side and Mbappe was pushed out towards the right. But a lot of Mbappe's most effective play was on this left-hand side, driving at Carvajal. To help Carvajal, the centre midfielders, both Casemiro as well as Modric, would try and double up against Mbappe and just prevent him from being able to at least come inside. So Carvajal just had to worry about him going on the outside, but regardless, it's Mbappe, so he'll still beat you on the outside. Another thing to mention about the Real Madrid defence was how aggressive their centre-backs could be when a forward drops. So we're seeing that here with Alaba. Obviously, counter-attacks are quite direct play. It's something that Paris Saint-Germain are set up for beautifully, especially with this man leading the line. But they were trying to get their fullbacks involved as well, as we saw with Hakimi, whose position was more aggressive, and then Mendes on the left-hand side. He's high in the box as the play is progressing, and he's the one that then is able to cut the ball back into Messi centrally. And again, in this scenario, we've got Paris Saint-Germain building up with that 3-1 shape. So we've got our centre-backs, Pereira as that right-sided centre-back. We've got Paredes as your CDM. Both of your full-backs trying to provide width. Again, Mendes being a little bit more conservative than Hakimi, near side here. And as mentioned, we've got Messi dropping to try and provide a link between the defence and attack. We've got Mbappe pulled from this left-hand side into more of a right-hand side / centre-forward position, with Neymar being the one holding that left-hand side berth, despite how effective Mbappe was initially on that left-hand side. With Angel Di Maria being subbed off, you now have the creative burden on the shoulders of Neymar, Messi and Verratti, with the thrust obviously still being provided here by Mbappe, at least higher up the pitch, although Neymar does like to receive the ball in these spaces and then dribble or play 1-2s with the players around him as he makes mazy runs through the center of a team. So as mentioned, we've got a mazy run by Neymar through the center of the pitch. He's pulled in off that left hand side, taking advantage of a slight ambiguity in who was meant to pick him up as he came from his left wing position. And then from there, he's able to turn and try and combine with likes of Messi as well as also Mbappe and just drive at the heart of the Real Madrid defense. Okay, so with that, let's move on to Real Madrid's build up. Typically building up in a 2-4-2-2. There was a bit of variation higher up the pitch because Modric would move from a centre midfield position into more of an attacking position to try and create a little bit of space for the likes of Cruz and Casemiro. Casemiro is more there in case things break down, whereas Cruz is trying to get onto the ball, so he will be dropping from a high position and trying to go towards the goalkeeper and the defenders for the short passing option. Okay, so we can see that in this scenario where we've got Modric peeling out towards his right hand side, whilst the two wide midfielders for Real Madrid try and provide options higher up the pitch. You've got Benzema dropping to potentially link up in this space with the likes of Cruz, who's going to want to drop into this space as the back line are ready to pass it out to him. However, Paris Saint-Germain are quite aggressive in their press, which is essentially a 3-4-1-2. So you've got your back line again. You've got Pereira, that right centre midfielder, dropping into a right centre back position in case Real Madrid try and play it long. And then in midfield, you've got, in this case, Verratti, who's pulling out and tracking that run by Modric. But otherwise, you've got with him Paredes, and then also your two fullbacks. So you've got far side Mendes and Hakimi, with Messi just here behind the referee, and then your two forwards looking to try and put pressure on the defensive line. The problem for Real Madrid was when Cruz dropped, then you just have him tracked, in this case by Paredes, and he simply just had no time to be able to pick up his head and try and ping a pass forwards. You'd end up playing it back, and with the numbers that Paris Saint-Germain have here, they're able to pin Real Madrid back, and eventually a long ball is played by Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain just win the ball back. And as I mentioned, Paris Saint-Germain monopolised possession, so they were really good at regaining possession. Paris Saint-Germain's ability to press Real Madrid and put enough pressure on Real Madrid's centre midfielders such that they weren't able to find time or space was really effective. So there's an example in the 10th minute where Paris Saint-Germain are able to force repeated passbacks by Real Madrid, and eventually this play that had started from a Real Madrid throw-in just inside their half ends up out of play with a Real Madrid throw-in again, but from practically the same position. One nice thing that we see at the end of that play though is how Real Madrid use the tucking in of their fullback. In this case, it's Carvajal, to create a channel to be able to play the ball down the line, in this case to Modric, but preferably to Asensio, the forward. Okay, so moving on to Real Madrid's possession in Paris Saint-Germain's half. I know I've mentioned it before, but can't stress it enough. Paris Saint-Germain monopolised possession. Real Madrid rarely were in Paris Saint-Germain's half, and that is just borne out by the stats. See the fact that Real Madrid only had 3 shots and they had none on target. So Real Madrid, when they got into Paris Saint-Germain's half, built up in like a 2-3-5 or a 3-1-6. 3-1-6 was much later in the game. Here, Real Madrid have the beginnings of the 2-3-5. You have both of your centre backs deep, with the centre midfielders looking to provide a platform. In this occasion, Modric is a little bit higher. He did sometimes start a little bit deep, and as the play progressed, he would try and move up into more of a number 10 role. So he would try and float across the pitch, whether it's left-hand side or right-hand side, and try and support the fullback and the wide forward in those spaces. Of course, you've got Benzema, who's leading the line. He's been really crucial for Real Madrid this season, although he's just coming back from injury. He often likes to float out towards this left-hand side especially, and sought to do that this game, but he was starved of service in most of the game. With the centre midfield base, Real Madrid tried to get their fullbacks to push higher up. Mendy, we see here, is a little bit deeper, but far side we see with Carvajal, he's trying to get into that more attacking position. Of course, with the fullbacks being higher, that allows them to be able to switch the play, and then also the fullbacks can provide potential overlapping runs, and it allows the two wide midfielders for Real Madrid to be able to tuck inside. Okay, so in the next phase of play, The 2-3-5 is a little bit more pronounced. You've still got your centre backs deep. You've got your centre midfielders with Modric in more of that 10 position. As I mentioned, he'd end up, as the play progressed, Benzema's pulled over towards that left-hand side and looking to try and combine with the two players that side, so left back and left winger, both looking to combine in the left-hand channel. And then far side, we've got Asensio being able to tuck inside, and then Carvajal, as the play progresses, if there's opportunity, he's going to be looking to try and get into this right-hand space. Okay, and then we have the examples of the 3-1-6 for Real Madrid, which was the shape that they used much later in the game after they made a number of substitutions, such as replacing Vinicius with Hazard, as well as substituting both of the players on that right-hand side. So they end up with Vasquez at right back and Rodrigo at right wing. The three at the back is a little bit wonky here. You've got Casemiro, who I'd class here as the centre-back, just because we'll see in the second example as well, he ends up between these players often. Yes, he's a little bit forward here. Anyway, we've got also Cruz in that CDM role, and you're looking to try and exploit his passing ability as much as possible. I'd say this almost varied between a 3-1 and a 3-2. It's a 3-1 at the moment because Cruz is the only CDM, but at times you'd end up with Valverde, not in this number 10 position, but more a little bit deeper, trying to help Cruz and the rest of the team in this more central, more defensive position. Here, Vasquez is a little bit more conservative than Real Madrid want him to be, whereas far side, you've got Mendy, the other fullback, in a very aggressive position, looking to attack the space between the right centre-back and right back of Paris Saint-Germain and create space for Hazard outside. So this is 2 minutes or so later. Again, we've got our back three with Casemiro as that central centre-back. You've got Cruz as the CDM, with Valverde a little bit higher up, and then both of your fullbacks looking to try and hold the width and potentially, if play progresses, try and get up and around, or just generally support their wide forward. Of course, Real Madrid tried to counter-attack as well, but with the counter-pressing that Kimpembe and Pereira were able to pull off quite successfully, given the shape that Paris Saint-Germain had in possession, that 3-1 shape that we mentioned. Real Madrid's counter-attacking tended to be quite inefficient, a little bit aimless. With that, we've covered the main points. Please have a look in the description or comments down below for the full tactical summary. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, it goes a really long way. Consider sharing this on social media and maybe subscribing. With that, we're out.